It's the Premier League first big heavyweight clash of the season. On the first weekend of the season, we've been treated Chelsea at home to the champions, Manchester City, where Manchester City run out 2-0 winners. And there was a bit of mystery coming into this game because with all the changes made to Chelsea's team, with the manager as well, we didn't really know what we were going to expect in terms of lineup, in terms of style, in terms of performance. Everything felt like a mystery when it came to it. And I would say this game went exactly how I thought it would. City fairly dominant, Chelsea having a couple moments, but a run-in-the-mill 2-0 victory, which just felt very City. But I thought it was a fantastic performance from Manchester City. I really thought they were in control, and for a team that sometimes takes a little bit of time to get going in a Premier League season, in this game, they were so in control. And as much as Chelsea had chances on the break, I never really felt like City were under real danger, even though there was a goal disallowed. They just always felt comfortable. And I guess that's just the level that this Pep Guardiola team have gotten to. But there was a lot to learn about this Chelsea team. Some good, some bad. And we're going to go over it. We're going to go over their attacking phase first. When Chelsea would build up in their original phases, it would be in a 2-4-4 with the two sitting midfielders, Lavia and Caicedo, in between the fullbacks who would push a little bit higher on. Sanchez becoming an integral part of the build-up with the centre-backs splitting. Enzo Fernandez operating in the higher 10 position off of Nick Jackson with Nkunku and Palmer as the wide players. And where this would quickly shift is in a couple of ways. One was they try and use the two centre midfielders, Lavia and Caicedo, to suck Silva and De Bruyne into the press, holding on to possession and then playing through them, a la Brighton under De Zerbi, where Lavia was definitely a lot more successful at it than Caicedo was. I thought Lavia was a lot more composed in possession, just a lot more technically comfortable in breaking the press and playing forward. They did get a couple opportunities, Chelsea, to play out with either Silva or De Bruyne jumping to press. If, say, the ball had gone back to Sanchez or to Colwill, one of them would go where Haaland would only really put on half a press to the players, leaving either Lavia or Caicedo free. And they didn't play the risky pass enough into these areas to get Lavia on the ball in maybe a bit of space. Colwill taking the ball here, who is technically gifted, to maybe take a touch out of his feet to suck a Silva into an area and have a quick touch around him, to then play the ball into Lavia, who could progress it forward in space. They turned down these opportunities a lot to then play the easy option if Cucurella would come short. And there were moments like that happened frequently, especially in the first half, and Chelsea were just unwilling to pull the trigger. But City did press well, as they always do. They're a very good pressing team. Another way that Chelsea would gain openings is by building up on the left. You'd get situations where Savinho would cover inside to maybe cover on Fofana, or if De Bruyne had gone to press the goalkeeper or the left centre back, then you get Savinho covering around to Caicedo as they built up on the left, which would mean Gusto would move forward to a higher position on the right hand side, occupying the width up there, where Chelsea couldn't really progress the ball over to him because of the press that City had him locked into on this side. But what they then did, if that attack was broken down on that left and they had to retreat and go back inside to the centre, is that Cole Palmer would then make the movement centrally and into this position in the half space to try and persist with the build-up and get on the ball here, where he could then use his technical ability to progress the play. But Kovacic, in these situations, was really alert to him making this movement here, and he jumped to the press from his middle position and get against him to stop him progressing the ball. So it just felt like they always had an answer to Chelsea's build-up, and it was a lot of it down to Chelsea's slow build-up, the fact that they made themselves a little bit predictable with where they were trying to open space up and for which player. And Pep Guardiola and Maresca are managers that know each other very well, so I'm sure that Guardiola would have had a lot of Maresca's methods scouted already. They would also try and get Enzo Fernandez maybe on the ball in deeper positions to have Colwill find this ball in here. Akanji did a really good job of following them up here as well to engage with him and prevent him from getting on the ball. So any way that Chelsea could try and build up, City had an answer for it. They defended well as a unit. And the most success Chelsea got was by hitting it direct. If, say, Akanji had gone to press and there was a bit of space opened up for the movement of Jackson, or for Gusto, or for Palmer, or for Nkunku, then they could push forward with it. Or if City just naturally dropped off as the game wore on, then they could push forward. And then this was the Chelsea shape when they did that. Chelsea's main attacking shape was a 3-2-4-1 with Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez as the wide 10s, with Nkunku occupying the wide left position, Gusto on the right, Cucurella tucking into form in the back three with the other centre-backs, and Lavia and Caicedo still narrow, still trying to draw the press onto him, which they would. You'd have Silva and De Bruyne pushing up onto the two holding midfielders to prevent them from progressing. And as a result, this left Kovacic in 2-on-1 situations. But he did a really good job, it has to be said, of when the ball would progress over to another side, he made sure he covered the passing angle into the 10 that was on that side to prevent them from getting clean angles onto and forcing them into a more difficult and technically harder pass to the other 10, which had found its way there a few times, but it wasn't as often on. And Kovacic managed the distances between the two tens really well. For a player that is playing in a position which isn't his natural one, he was very good. Doku and Savinho were caught sort of in between wide centre back and full back, and the reason for this is because if the ball would transfer over here to Gusto or to Nkunku on the other side, then Savinho could drop in with Guardiola sticking in a little bit more narrow, just to make sure that the wide 10 wasn't able to get the joy and space they could because of that back four being so horizontally compact. And it just gave them a bit more stability. And then for the supporting players to drop in, Chelsea did try and use a level of flexibility by getting Gusto into the narrow position in this area with Cole Palmer holding the width out wide right to mix success. I always feel like you want Palmer more in this position here. I don't think he's as effective out wide, but it was an attempt to try and disrupt City's shape, which you have to give a little bit of credit for. And there were issues with the build-up. Robert Sanchez wasn't great with his playing out from the back, gave away a goal essentially doing that. And it felt like a real lack of, I don't know, just quality with the way they attacked City. And unless there was a more direct option, they struggled to create an opening. They didn't have any ideas outside the basic game plan. And as a result, City were able to defend well and keep them out. And their back four was fantastic all game. They defended compactly as a unit. Kovacic, despite the fact he isn't Rodri, did really well at the base of the midfield. And they were effective all throughout. And Savinho and Doku, as we'll touch on to where it went negatively for Chelsea, did really well in terms of covering in and doing their jobs as wide players and protecting the wide areas, giving their fullback support. And you have to give them credit for doing that, considering they're wide players that you maybe wouldn't associate with that type of role. But that was the Chelsea attacking shape. How did City line up? So when City would build up, it would be in a sort of 4-1-3-3, I guess, with involving Edison in the build-up, which he would split the back three, and Kanji moving out to right back, Diaz at left centre back with Guardiola at left back. Kovacic would show for the ball deeper as Rico Lewis would start making movements into an inverted midfield position. And Chelsea would press with their front four and their front four only, as because of the positioning of Silva and De Bruyne and then Rico Lewis, Caicedo and Lavia couldn't commit to the press. And they lost the numerical game because it was a 4-on-5 with Edison involved. Jackson would come in here. Palmer would be caught in between Guardiola and Diaz of whether to come. And Nkunku on Akanji. But again, wary of Rico Lewis behind him, and Enzo Fernandez would push onto Kovacic. And Kovacic did a fantastic job. Enzo Fernandez, I thought, half-hearted presser at points. In fact, the entire front four was. I'm not going to actually just pin down Enzo Fernandez. I thought, as a pressing four, even with that numerical disadvantage, really half-hearted, really timid, nowhere near as aggressive as it should be. At least disrupt him, at least force him into bringing either Rico Lewis or Bernardo Silva back, at least draw City further up their own pitch to try and beat the aggression, pin them into one side, and they didn't. It felt so reactive. I felt like City had time to get their touches in and play through them, and it was easy for them to break out of this. And when they would, and they pushed Chelsea a bit further back, as I'm going to do now, would be in a diamond midfield. We've seen them with the box midfield, but it would be Kovacic as the sole pivot, Rico Lewis moving into the half space on the right, De Bruyne on the left, and Bernardo Silva centrally. Of course, with the way City play, these would rotate. It would be fluid. You'd see Silva out wide right. You'd see Lewis come in the middle. You'd see De Bruyne take up positions that would best serve them. Doku and Savinho high and wide in the wings. And for the first 15-20 minutes, there was this formation. It was Savinho on the left, Doku on the right, on the side of their strongest foot. And I can only assume it was because Pep wanted them to maybe get down to the byline and put crosses in across for Haaland or for the front three behind. They quickly changed. They weren't as comfortable in these positions because they still found themselves coming inside onto their weaker foot. And obviously producing worse quality as a result. So they quickly changed, swapped sides. Doku was more effective on the left, and Savinho was fantastic on the right. Caused Cucurella all sorts of problems once that change had been made. Where this system really fell apart for Chelsea was the midfield diamond for Manchester City. So Rico Lewis coming in here made it a 3, and they outnumbered Lavia and Caicedo big style. You had to feel sorry for the midfield too. They couldn't get near him. There was a wrong decision to be made at all sorts. They move across and shuffle about. and City could easily just transfer it over and play it to the player that was free. And they got no support because of the back four were pinned. Cole and Fofana were occupied by Haaland. We know how important he is for centre backs to keep a 2-on-1 on at all times. And because of the wide and high positioning of the wingers, the full backs were pinned in, so they couldn't break to try and help and engage with the midfield. And also, I thought Nkunku and Palmer defensively were shocking. It was supposed to, I think, be a 4-2-3-1, so I'll cover Fernandez a little bit. But because Kovacic would drop in a lot deeper, he would bring Enzo Fernandez with him, which created a lot more space in this area of the pitch in between the midfield two and the attacking two. Where Nkunku and Palmer gave no one any support. They weren't effective in pressing the wide centre backs when they were on the ball to stop them from getting an easy pass off, and they weren't covering into form into a midfield four to protect that central area from being outnumbered. They were in between a lot of places. I just thought real poor off the ball, real liabilities defensively. And it was easy for City to play over him, especially when at points throughout the game, as Kevin De Bruyne would come out into a left back position to at least play around the narrow shape that I can only assume was kept narrow to try and prevent passes into the middle of the pitch. But with De Bruyne making this run here into the space where he had a lot of it, that he could take the ball, drive it into this position, or pass it to a player that was showing for the ball. You'd have Bernardo Silva doing it and Rico Lewis on the right hand side. And when this change would happen and when De Bruyne would come out to this position, Savinho would make the move inside, dragging Gusto with him. So De Bruyne could then attack down the left, leaving Gusto in a 2-on-1 situation where he couldn't make a right decision. Again, not really getting any support from Palmer, as well as Nkunku on the other side. And City could create chances from far. It's where their goals came from. The first one, especially, was through this outnumbering on the left hand side that pulled the defensive line apart. Hull started pairing in between. Silva moved into the space, set up Haaland, who finished brilliantly. Second goal comes from poor playing out of the back and the midfield getting caught. And the midfield too, getting caught in between players between the lines, and Kovacic moving into the space that was created as a result of them being already outnumbered. And again, Chelsea just couldn't react and adapt to City's shape. And full credit to Pep, he's changed City again. The midfield diamond was fantastic. We saw this actually at Barcelona at the end of his stint there. He tried something like this, but by the time that spell was coming to an end, and I don't think the balance of players was particularly right for it. But now he has that balance, and if this is what he's going to go with throughout the season with the personnel he's got, then I have no doubts that City retain this league, in my personal opinion. I'd love to be wrong. 5 in a row gets a bit boring. They were so in control, and this gave a much better rest defence with the back three, and Rico Lewis having the athleticism and the agility to move quickly back into space. And Kunku wasn't going to cause any trouble with his pace either. And it was a complete performance from Manchester City, and fair play to him. It'll be interesting to see how Chelsea bounce back from this and where they go and what their lineup is going to be next game. There's still a question mark. Nothing's really been answered. I feel like this was a predictable result, so we'll see going forward. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Cheers, lads. In a bit.